Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, this is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and welcome to a new series on my channel. This series is titled Animation Studies, and specifically we're going to be studying a guy called Adam Phillips. Adam Phillips is a guy that was working for Disney in the early 2000s, and around 2005, 2008-ish, Adam Phillips started to release these little cartoons on the internet called the Brackenwood series. And this series is a classic on the internet. But at the time, he was using a piece of software that his peers inside of Disney Studios were criticizing him for. In fact, they were criticizing him for making stupid cartoons on the internet. They were seeing it all as something very unprofessional. The software he was using was Macromedia Flash. Now, of course, obviously, that software now, with after-the-fact reasoning, of course, Flash is a legitimate piece of animation software. But really, all that Macromedia Flash was initially designed to do was to serve as a means to make quick little animations for a graphic user interface, for software, and things like that. It was never intended to be something that was geared towards being all the animation tools that you would need. And yet, Adam Phillips managed to make something pretty brilliant. At the time that he released the Brackenwood series, there was nothing on the internet that compared to it, from the animation quality all the way down to the soundtrack. Of course, he was a professional animating and posting his stuff on the internet. So of course, competition was pretty slim. But I would make the argument that if it wasn't for Adam Phillips to at least some extent, a lot of the digital software out there nowadays wouldn't be taken serious by the 2D animation industry. Or at least it would have taken a much longer amount of time for the 2D animation industry to recognize the validity of 2D animation software. Primarily because after a short while of him continually getting a bunch of job offers because he released the Brackenwood series, he started to kind of calculate just how much money he was saying no to. And there came a point where he realized he would be making more money just going freelance. So he quit the job that most people would consider to be the dream job over at Disney to basically work for himself. Now, what we're going to be studying today is specifically a little tiny segment from Water Lollies. The next few installments of the Animation Studies series is going to actually continually focus on this particular animation, Water Lollies. And the primary reason why is because there is a lot of water inside of this particular cartoon. And I've never seen any animator animate water better than Adam Phillips. And this cartoon, the whole Brackenwood series, was made while he was doing effects animations for Disney. This was the peak of his skill when it came to making effects. Now, we could go ahead and look at something like The Little Mermaid, or look at another scene here and there, maybe from Hercules, where there's a lot of water. Now, these are high production value scenes. And the reason being is because with every shift of movement in the pose, it requires an animation with the water. And a lot of the movements are oriented around action with this Hercules scene. And so since it's so action-oriented, most actions require a splash. Lots of splashes. A lot of time, money, and effort went into making this scene. And it is Disney. There is quality here. This is the best that the industry has to offer, especially for so much water effects and such like that. But even still, I look at the water effects that Adam Phillips is able to produce, and I see better quality in the work that Adam Phillips does. Now, in this video specifically, we're going to be focusing on water droplets. Okay, we're not going to be focusing on big bodies of water and how water behaves inside of a large pool of water. We're specifically in this video focusing on water droplets, their behavior, kind of their anatomy. The anatomy of a water droplet is a little bit different than, say, the anatomy that a human being would have, or something like a dog or a bull would have, because the anatomy of a water droplet changes depending on where you're looking at it. Two people can be sitting in a room looking at the same desk and see different reflections shining back at them. So the same thing kind of happens with a water droplet. But these are concepts to keep in mind while making a water droplet. In this video, I'm going to show you at least 2 different types of ways of making a water droplet. So, with no further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, so really quickly here, what animation are we going to be studying in this video? Now, we've already actually seen it inside of the intro of the video. Okay, so let me just go ahead and press play, and you guys can see it. So we see a bunch of water droplets. We see this little creature that I'll call a feather bee, because it looks like a feather, and yet throughout the course of the cartoon, they behave like bees in large numbers. And so I call it a feather bee. And so it settles on a water droplet and starts drinking from it. And then a water droplet from above just drips down, causes a splash effect, and then it scares off the feather bee. Alright, so that's all fine and good. So, like, the main things that I'm going to be focusing on is, like, how to draw, kind of, to some extent, a water droplet. Like, if you notice this water droplet right here, let me go ahead and activate some columns real quick. Ooh, shoot. Kind of skipped ahead. Okay, this water droplet right here looks nothing like that water droplet. There is a reason for that, but I don't have any concrete 100% answers as to why and when to draw it like this. The best advice that I have for you is, if you want to get good at drawing water droplets and being able to predict when you're going to see a particular interesting lens effect coming from a water droplet, you should probably take some photographs of some water droplets and draw from them, and just kind of learn, when does a water droplet look like this versus that. Okay? And furthermore, like, as we continue forward with this, let's see, this water droplet right here looks nothing like this water droplet here. Again, so we have 3 examples of water droplets, and they look different. Every single one looks different to some extent. For example, well, I'll get into this deeper. Let me just get into this and just cover the material that I've prepared, okay? So first of all, let's go ahead and just appreciate the staging of the scene, okay? The main character or subject isn't in the background, so the background has been blurred. And you can see that, you know, this area that's all blotted out in red, it's been blurred. Now, the next frame, okay? Now, there's no blur on this left side, but it gradients on over to having a blur over here. But what I didn't notice initially is that, and you can see that, it's blurred here, whereas it's pretty crisp, pretty clear right there. But what I didn't notice is that all throughout this region right here, it's blurred. So it's kind of like a small bit of focus right here, and it blurs out around everywhere else. It's like a radial blur. So, you know, this is fairly common with macro photography. And so it's not necessary that you just learn everything about photography. It's not necessary that you have to be a master at photography or buy a bunch of lenses and learn everything about every single type of lens out there and what it does for your camera. No, I think it's more important that you know the variously different types of photography and what they tend to look like. I think that's what's most important. Now, don't get me wrong, if you know a lot about photography, I'm pretty sure that that would go a long ways in improving your ability to stage your scenes pretty convincingly. But I don't think it's necessary. I think it's just necessary that you know how the variously different types of photography tend to look. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So once again, this video is about the anatomy of a water droplet. Of course, the anatomy of a water droplet is different for water and its reflections and such. I'm just introducing a bunch of concepts more so, and so let's go ahead and move on. Now, the first thing that we should try to observe here is that there tends to be two highlights on every water droplet. Now, that's typically the bare minimum. I have seen, at least in this video, or this footage here, cases where there's just one, but it's not really that big of a deal because this is not necessarily reality. I would more so reference reality. But what you do notice is that there does tend to be a highlight on the top surface of the water droplet, okay, where the sun or the brightest light in the room happens to hit the water droplet. And then there's a highlight on the bottom, somewhere below the water droplet. Now, what I've noticed is that it's not necessarily that if there is a direct sun ray going through here, it's not like these two highlights will just line up perfectly. I've noticed that. It's weird because, like, later on, as we get to this section out here, let me find it. Okay, look at that. So the highlight and the highlight over here is in the same spot throughout the full duration of the animation. I mean, sure, it's moving with the water droplet, but this one is in the same spot as well throughout the full course of the animation too. So that's pretty interesting. So obviously, if the sun was making a straight ray going through here, as the water droplet would be elongating, this would be moving more over to here throughout the course of the stretch, but it doesn't. Now, you know, animation doesn't necessarily have to be 100% realistic, so there is a chance that in reality maybe this would move over, but maybe this is just a simulation of reality. But I've just noticed this looks really good, and I really like the way that Adam Phillips animates water. So, you know, if he does it a particular way, he's probably used a reference for this animation. So, next thing is this, okay? Let's take a look at the exterior of this water droplet. It looks like there is a gray color just around the border of the water droplet, okay? And then pretty much the color that's right along the center here, just before the nucleus effect of the water droplet, I call this right here the nucleus effect right here. I call that the nucleus area, okay? Right there. So where this last red line is, this color around this region is this exact same brownish gray color of the rock that the water droplet is sitting on. So to kind of prove to you that it is the same grayish brown color that's here as is what's here in this yellow, let me go ahead and get the swatch of the color, okay, of the rock. Okay, so you can kind of read that if you want. And so let's zoom in on the water droplet and just kind of flip through the animated bit. You can see that it's pretty much the same color as the rock. In fact, what it looks like with this water droplet is this. This is what it looks like. It looks like there's two layers that compose this water droplet. It looks like the first layer is the shape of the water droplet and a gradient. It's this color right here in the center, and it gradients out to being really close to this gray color along the border, but not quite, because there needs to be a contrast. It has to have that contrast around the border of this water droplet, because this is significantly grayer than and darker than the rest of the interior of the water droplet. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing. It's you know, darker gray out here, and then it's the rock color in the middle. Okay, of course I don't expect you to be able to read that. So then at that point, after you establish that weird gradient there, what you need to do is create the nucleus, if it happens to have a nucleus. Okay, so what is the nucleus? What is that nucleus effect? Let's go ahead and take a look at that, okay? Let's go ahead and flip through. Okay, let's see. What's in the center of the water droplet? Okay. So I went ahead and made the colors of the background really obnoxious. The darkest color of the trees, that's all yellow. The brighter colors of the trees, that's all red. And the color of the sky and the color of the mountains and such, I went ahead and just consolidated that all into kind of a grayish color. Okay, so let's see. Let's go ahead and flip this background horizontally. Okay, so it's been flipped horizontally. Let's go ahead and flip it vertically. Okay, and then let's go ahead and play. So it shrinks, it stretches out. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom on in so that we have a nice, good point of view. And then let's shave off the edges, and that's by and large, that's pretty similar. I mean, the only difference is like something like right there. But, you know, it is possible that maybe he used something like the snipping tool on his background, which is, of course, like I said earlier, 4 different layers, you know, the dark tree, the lighter tree, the mountain, and the sky, you know? So, it is possible he used something like the snipping application, took a screenshot, and then, you know, somehow converted it into vectors and shrunk it down and shaved off the edges, just like what you're seeing on the screen right now. It is possible that he might have done something like that, but, you know, it is probably more likely that he just used the color picker and he's like, okay, so the background here, it tends to, okay, so we have a lot of darks along the edge here and on the top. I don't know. I don't know. In a way, you know, actually, to some extent, it just seems like if he was doing a reverse, it would be dark down here. But I don't know. With the other water droplet that shows up in the scene, it winds up being upside down. So I'm going to stick to that, because like the sky color, yeah, the sky color is right here, along the bottom of this nucleus. Okay, and of course, you know, the sky is up. Okay, so yeah, if there is a, it just makes sense to me that this is the way it is, at least to me, where, yeah, that makes sense. To me, it makes sense. In all likelihood, he went ahead and just used the color picker, and he just went ahead and colored in the dark tree, and then got his color picker and colored in the lighter tree, and then just used the color picker and then colored in the sky color manually. Okay, that seems pretty plausible. So let's go ahead and flip on through so that we can see the animation a little bit further. Okay, the feather bee has started to appear on the screen. I went ahead and kind of drew an outline on it. I thought maybe I might be able to learn something from it. For example, like if I turned on a bunch of onion skins, you know, I might be able to see a bunch of interesting looking spacing is something that I thought that I might be able to see. And yeah, to some extent, yeah, we can kind of see something like that. But we don't need any of that. So let me go ahead and get rid of all of those onion skins. Alright, so let's take a look at the reflections, okay? Basically, on this frame right here, you can see the beginnings of the reflection because the feather bee starts to kind of descend and approach the water droplet. And this is the first moment that you can see the reflection. Okay, so let me zoom in real close to it. Okay, you can see that, right? I kind of drew out this little purple line right here. And you can see it. You can totally see it just show up. Now, of course, you know, I thought, well, okay, well, it's... let me write down my observation. Okay, there it is. The first... Okay, there it is. First, notice that the reflection is really tiny at this point. This is because the object that it's reflecting is quite some distance away from the water droplet. So the closer the object is to the water droplet, the larger and larger the reflection will become. And also, notice that the reflection is on the opposite side of the water droplet. It's not on the surface of the water droplet. Okay. Let's see. Opposite side of the water droplet. As the object is approaching the water droplet, the feather bee creature is coming from above, and so the reflection is inside the water droplet and on the bottom of the water droplet. Yeah, okay, so let's just go ahead and continue, and we can actually see this reflection grow as the feather bee gets closer and closer. And you can actually see that it's also gaining in thickness right here, too, okay? And so at this point, my lines start to wrap around it. And you can see this weird effect as it continues to get closer and closer. Now, this effect right here, where it starts to do this, let me go on to the next frame and show you. Okay, so now we don't get any reflection at the bottom of the water droplet like we did earlier, okay? So let me flip back. See what I'm saying? There's a reflection at the bottom of the water droplet, and it switches. It goes to the top of the water droplet. Isn't that interesting? And so, like, I don't know if this would happen. To me, it just seems like if there's an object right here... Let me change the color here. If there's an object right here, then the reflection of it would be over here. And if there's an object over here, then it would have a reflection of it right here. And if this is so close that it starts to appear up here, it just seems like, okay, well then the reflection should just be like that at this point. But what I think this is just an in-between. And animation does not necessarily have to be a true depiction of reality. I don't really think an actual water droplet would start having its reflection transition like this. But I think Adam Phillips, he needed to get the reflection from being down here to being up here. And I think it just looked weird having it teleport from here to here. So he drew that. And the transition just looked really nice, I think. I think that's what he went for. Okay? And here's something that you should notice also. Look at the shape of the water droplet. Here the water droplet is just this round dome. Okay? And then here it gets these little concave bits here. Okay? And I drew an over-exaggeration of that right here. Okay? You can kind of see that. You know, it went from being a round dome, sort of shape, like that, to all of a sudden having these weird shapes. Okay? Once an object touches a water droplet, the droplet forms a concave ring around what's touching it. When touching water in general, this is a normal behavior of water. But it's... there's a typo there. But... let me get rid of that typo. I'm sorry. You know, I try to catch all of this before the video. We notice it and see it in macro photography, and we see it in this image because it's inspired by micro photography. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, so look at this. Now, it's not like the feather bee slammed into the water droplet, okay? And yet it starts to behave like a bounce house, okay? Let's take a look at this real quick, okay? So the feather bee descends, and then bloop, and then it starts bouncing around a little bit like a little bounce house, okay? You can kind of see it kind of settle. That kind of cool, okay? And so let's go ahead and flip on through to the next section, which is the next scene. Okay, so there we have it. Okay, so this is the start of a new scene in animation terminology, not in traditional film terminology. In animation, a scene is every new camera angle. The staging is a super blurry background with an in-focus leaf with a water droplet on it, okay? Now, this water droplet, once again, it's got the background flipped upside down, and it's the mirror image of the background as well. So, you know, we get the color of the sky up here and stuff like that. But there is no real nucleus there. No nucleus effect there. And I think it's because there's no part where we're kind of looking in 3D towards the actual... What is going on with my stylus? It's not like we're looking in 3D towards the leaf. This is like a true profile view. But then again, you know, I've been proven wrong about that in the past, so who knows when to use the nucleus effect or not. The one thing that I find really curious is that the reflection of the leaf is right here. Now, last time we had an object touching the water droplet, the reflection wound up being on the same side of the object touching the water droplet, okay? And yet, for some reason, we see the reflection on the opposite side. You would think that you'd be able to see, like, some sort of reflection right there of the water droplet right there. But that's not the case in this case, okay? So, I've pretty much done a bunch of observation about this already, but basically it stretches out, and then once the thing pops, okay, you can see that. We can see something right here, like, okay, so that's the thickness of the spout right here, and if I grab that thickness and move it on over to here, we can see that this water droplet is actually thicker than this spout. Now you may think, oh well, there's some sort of mistake, okay, some sort of oversight. Well, not necessarily. I mean, because, okay, here's the top of the water droplet, and here's the bottom of the water droplet, right? Yeah, okay. And, you know, there's this gap right here, and there's another gap right there, okay? So, we have another number of little gaps, and so basically, this space right here, some of this water in this little space got sucked back up here, because, like, you can see, like, this water spout, the edge of it is, like, right there. And let's go ahead and turn on the onion skin and flip to the next one. So some of that water got sucked back up here. You can see because it got thicker, right? So some of this water also got redistributed. It got pulled down, okay? And it went into this water droplet. Now this water droplet is way thin, and I don't know any explanation for that. But, you know, those are just little observations that might help. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, one thing that I noticed about this particular animation is everything in it is animated on ones. And so, look at that. It's a fully intact little water spout, and then all of a sudden it's completely broken. There's no gradual in-betweens to bring it to this point where it's broken. And so the water drops, and then we return back to the original scene. And what we get is this interesting splat effect. Let me turn off my onion skins. Okay, so it's interesting that in the previous scene, we had no context as to the size of that second water droplet. And now we can actually see it in the context of the size of the original water droplet and in relationship to the feather bee. Okay, so the water droplet has almost made contact with the rock, as is evident by the shadow, which is green. Okay, green. Okay, so pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and turn on first pass. Okay, let's go ahead and flip. Okay, so the red lines are arcs or paths. Okay, and the arcs and paths show up as the anatomy of a splash effect start to gradually come into shape. So, like, the original splat doesn't really form much of the anatomy. You can already see two paths being created here with two of these little bulges. That made sense to Adam Phillips, that, okay, well, these two are going to go towards the camera. Okay, so let's follow this little bulge here. Okay, so it turns into a little bit of water droplet right there. Now it's a true water droplet, and it comes towards the camera, and it disappears. Okay, same thing with this one. Okay, it becomes a proper water droplet. For some reason, it looks like it tripled in size, and it goes ahead and flies off the camera. Okay, so there's only two paths on the first splat frame. Okay, now the yellow lines, they represent the outline, you know, the actual line work of the animation, and the, you know, the purple lines represent water droplets that and water strings that have no predictable pattern. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and create a new style real quick here, and I'm just going to use a color that isn't being currently used with this pass. Okay, so basically on right after the initial splat, okay, frame number 2 on the splat, okay, suddenly there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different paths. Okay, so some sort of anatomy has been figured out. You don't necessarily have to find out the anatomy of your splash or splatter effect with water on the first splatter frame. You can start figuring it out afterwards. And, like, what you can see is, like, there's a few more that actually get generated. See? Look at that. Suddenly, this water droplet, all of a sudden, it gets hit by something, and then it creates this extra arc. So on the third frame afterwards, it creates new arcs as well. So that's pretty cool. You know, we can go ahead and follow that, and you know, I think that if you guys had access to this file, you guys would be able to find this helpful if you were able to look at this frame by frame and kind of take a look at my little observations that I have here. Here's something that's kind of cool. Okay, let's watch this splat, and once it splats, has this little miniature water droplet, and a new arc gets created, and then poof. Okay, and you know, also the same thing happens over here. Okay, now it's kind of blurry, so it's hard to see, but you can see it splat. Okay, and then you see some new arcs and some miniaturized little water droplets appear as well. And you can see that they're there. Like, they're blurry, but you can see that they're there. Okay? And after everything starts to kind of settle, okay, just a little bit. I mean, there's still a little bit more animation going on, but once things have pretty much fully settled, the main body of the splat and everything, it's you know, it creates these strings, which I've gone ahead and drawn out in purple. It starts to kind of retract and come back, okay? and it just kind of settles, and then it starts to roll down as everything starts to settle. Okay? Kind of a really nice timing there. But look at how much of this is purple. Okay? On frame 3 after the splat. Frame 4, there's a lot of stuff that's purple. You might think that's a water droplet, but no, I think that's, I don't know. That might be a water droplet. Yeah, that's got to be a water droplet. And I think this is frame 5 after the splat. Still a bunch of purple, and then suddenly it's all gone. Wait a second. I found some more. Okay, 6, and then poof. Like there's this one. This one is weird. It follows this arc. Okay, it suddenly appears on frame 2 of the splat, and you can actually follow it, and then poof, disappears. Isn't that weird? But it all happens so quickly that you'd never notice. Weird. No joke. I mean, it happened so quick, you'd never notice. Boom. And you never notice that those purple... I mean, I even drew out the unpredictable ones in purple, and yet you still don't notice them. Isn't that cool? Alright, so let's move on to the second pass, okay? Now, the second pass deals with the nucleus. Now, the nucleus is kind of interesting because it helps you be able to kind of sculpt the shape of the water. You're able to kind of help form the shape of it. Like here, this one right here, it looks like it's been sculpted to look that particular way for a reason. For adult reasons, really. But still, I mean, like, I don't know, water can look like that, I suppose. And again, you know, it looks like the nucleus has been used to kind of sculpt this. And most of what you see here, like, you're not seeing much of the sky or the color of the mountains. What you're seeing here is more so, this is the dark color of the tree here, and the lighter color of the tree. But, you know, you get over here, okay, let me turn off the second pass. All of this, every last bit of this, is the dark color of the tree. You don't always have to include all of the colors of the background, especially once it starts to get really thin. The strings and the tiny water droplets and stuff, you can just do the darkest color in the background. You don't necessarily have to include all of the other colors. Not just because there's not much room for it, but just simply because that's how nature is. It just looks like that. So let's turn on the second pass, and you guys can kind of see how all of that kind of comes together. And notice how the nucleus shrinks as it rolls around the concave shape of the rock. Isn't that cool? Actually, no, convex shape of the rock. I said concave. I meant convex. Alright, so that's cool. Let's go third pass, okay? Third pass are the highlights. Okay, and, you know, the accompanying green or blue color that goes next to the highlights. And, you know, that makes it all. But here's something that I noticed that's kind of interesting. Because, like, for every new pair of highlights, you know, okay, so there's, you know, pair number 1, pair number 2, pair number 3. There's not really a pair number 4, but, you know, you feel like it should be there. But basically, for every single new set of, like, highlights, what you get is where it looks like, okay, that's the entire background right there. Oh look, the background cloned itself. Oh look, the background cloned itself again. Oh look, it cloned itself again. And this isn't a reflection like with the feather bee, okay? It's not like, no, that right there is a reflection there. And like even earlier, with the feather bee kind of descending down on the water droplet, that right there, I think that is a reflection and not actually like looking through a lens or like looking through your glass. that has to be a reflection, in my point of view. But, you know, that's just my thoughts there. So, you know, this is basically it right there. That's the anatomy of a water droplet and some of the behaviors that a water droplet has. Now, I have shared a number of Adam Phillips animations with you inside of this video, and I plan on spending the beginning portions of this video series as often as I can, revisit this video series, but I plan on revisiting the animations by Adam Phillips quite a bit. I plan on studying other animators in the future, but like Adam Phillips is the main guy to be focusing on for right now. And let me turn off the background real quick and go to scene settings and just turn the background black. Okay? Now, it's just an exercise of something interesting. I'm just going to go ahead and rewind it and press play. And yeah, some of the animation doesn't make sense in black, but here at the tail end, you see the splash, and it looks kind of cool. Okay? So that was the splash. Of course, you know, boom. 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 Of course, it's been removed from the scene. There's no staging, so seeing it like this, it's a little bit different because it's lost all of its context. But it still looks interesting, and you can still get something out of it. Now, the thing is I would love to share this file with you guys, okay? All that you've seen me doing on the screen, if you guys are not familiar with the software that I'm using, I've been using OpenToons. OpenToons is 100% free animation software. So, the file and the software are free. I would love to be able to share this file with you guys, but I have absolutely no idea how I should share this with you guys. Of course, you know, if anyone knows how I can not have to spend money in order to share this with you guys, then that would be much appreciated. But yeah, like, just keep me posted. Leave a comment down below on ways that I can share this with you guys. If I can find a way how to do that, then I'll include it in the video description below so that you guys can go ahead and download this. I don't know if it'll be there in the video description below, but just check, just in case I figure it out and find a way to share this stuff with you and all that good stuff. And you know, even though there's been some copywritten material on this video, it does follow into, I believe, what's called Section 107 of the copyright code, where I've been criticizing, studying, you know, scholarly work. That's pretty much what this is, and so I hope I don't get slammed with a copyright infringement. But anyways, I'm kind of digressing. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I put a lot of work into this, and I've been wanting to get into something like this for quite some time. So, anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. If you guys would like to take a look at more of my content, feel free to click on any of the things that are appearing on the screen right now. And if you'd like more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell. Thank you very much for your time.